Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you, Bill. It's my pleasure on behalf of the Wellington School of Business and Government and Victoria University of Wellington and the Southeast Asia Centre of Asia Pacific Excellence to welcome you tonight to what is the second of an exciting international alumni speaker series. And a big thank you to Datacom and Bill Grindell for hosting us here across the road from our Pipitea campus. You have an even better view than we do. And a special welcome also to Daryl Lowe, the Deputy High Commissioner of the Republic of Singapore, based here in Wellington. So a key public role of universities and of a faculty like ours that combines a focus on both business and government is to shed light on different issues that organisations and society face. So we're particularly delighted tonight to introduce our second international alumni speaker, Goh Swee Chen, to talk to us about trust in a fractious world, the future of research and innovation collaborations, where she will explore the growing crisis of trust in the world and its impact on global partnerships in science, technology and innovation. Swee Chen has a distinguished business career, having led significant businesses in oil and gas, consumer goods and IT sectors. She joined Shell in 2003 and retired as chairman Shell Companies in Singapore in January 2019. She was previously with Procter & Gamble and IBM. A global leader, she's lived and worked in Singapore, Malaysia, the Netherlands, Australia, USA, Japan, and China. We just have to lure you here. She's currently chair of the National Arts Council and Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. She also serves on the boards of Singapore Airlines, Singapore Power Group, JTC Corporation, Woodside Energy Australia, and global decarbonisation investment platform Gen Zero. She's a member of the Singapore Legal Services Commission, Centre for Livable Cities Advisory Panel, and Singapore Research, Innovation and Enterprise Council. So obviously you're very busy and we're so happy that you've fitted us into your schedule. Significantly for us, Swee Chen graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Information Sciences from Victoria University of Wellington. She also has an MBA from Chicago Booth, University of Chicago, and she was named Distinguished Alumni Chicago Booth in 2018. She's married with 3 children, and her husband and her daughter are also alum of Victoria University of Wellington. So it's my pleasure to now welcome Swee Chen to present tonight's lecture. She'll speak for about 40 minutes or so, and then there'll be time for questions. And afterwards we'll have refreshments and the opportunity for further engagement and networking. So please welcome Swee Chen.
Thanks, Jane, for that introduction. Good evening, everyone, and Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Daryl Lowe and Bill. Thank you for hosting us here in this beautiful place. As Jane was introducing what I do, it just make a mental note to myself. I need to retire from some of these obligations. As Jane said, I graduated in 1982. My husband and I met here, so it's a place that brings happy memories to me and my husband, hopefully. And actually, my cousin's daughter also studied here. So there are 4 of us in the family who are alumni of Victoria University. So, the talk that we have today is really about the growing crisis of trust in a fractured world. I thought it's a rather heavy topic to talk about in the evening at about 6 o'clock. So whether I go for 40 or 45 minutes, Jane, depends on whether we still have the crowd at the end. Because it can tend to be a rather serious and dry topic, but let me cover it because when when Victoria, you asked me to do this talk, I was thinking about what should I talk about. From being in the oil and gas industry, I thought maybe energy transition or sustainability, but I felt very strongly that this is a topic that I wanted to talk about, and thankfully it gained traction with the team here. Because in my various roles, I see this as really an issue that needs to be addressed. And because it matters for the future of research and innovation. And I want to first ask you to picture a room full of scientists from rival nations all rushing to stop the pandemic, or businesses across different continents trying to build a new technology. And in these kind of scenarios, trust is not a soft sentiment. It is the core infrastructure that makes collaboration actually possible. And when trust erodes, you see partnerships actually falter. So the next 45 minutes, I share my view on how this trust deficit impacts the global partnerships in science, technology, and innovation. And I'll cover it in 5 areas. The crisis of trust, why trust matters, new realities, new risks, rethinking collaboration models, and really, after doing all the whining and complaining, what can we all do? So I'll cover that as the last topic. And it is actually harder and harder to collaborate across borders. And it is just at a time when the world needs it most. Problems like climate change, problems like environmental degradation and infectious diseases cannot be addressed fully without global collaboration. And public confidence in governments and media has really plummeted in many places. I don't know if you have heard of the Edelman Trust Barometer. They've been doing it for 25 years. They survey well over 30,000 respondents in 28 countries. And the 2025 Edelman survey finds more than half of the major economies actively distrust government. So businesses is now the most trusted. Trusted institution at 62% globally. In other words, people are losing faith that leaders and institutions will do what is right by them. And this distrust is fueled by perceived failures from pandemic responses to corruption scandals, leaving citizens somewhat skeptical. And the same Edelman survey finds globally that 63% of people say that it's becoming harder and harder to distinguish between what is right or what is the incorrect or false information. And misinformation actually spreads faster than facts. We all know that. Gossips spread really fast. In such an environment, conspiracy theories then flourish, and even basic scientific facts become very politicized. And this fits a vicious circle. Low trust makes people more susceptible to misinformation, and misinformation further undermines trust. And within society, political polarization adds another layer of complexity as well. So communities are split into echo chambers, each side distrusting the other side, and we see that very prevalent in some parts of the world. Trust between nations are also fraying. Major powers openly speak of each other as strategic rivals nowadays. An example would be during the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, it sent shockwaves through the world and especially impact international collaboration. And virtually overnight, some partnerships were just terminated. And one example is MIT terminating a more than decade-old research partnership with Russia. And US-China relations have also soured, and as a result, public opinion polls show a deep distrust between the two sides. When you read the Western media and you read the Chinese, more Chinese media, you could see, really contrasting misinformation. And they are not wrong. I think both sides are right, and there are usually different shades of what is right. And when geopolitics turn adversarial, the first casualty is always trust and open line of communication. So I did promise this is a serious topic. I hope it's still holding your interest. So there is also an erosion of global norms, and we see skepticism towards global institution that was set up initially to foster collaborations. And for instance, one of them is United Nations. United Nations has really lost a lot of trust around the world. And only I believe about 42% trust the United Nations. And countries accuse each other of exploiting international rules, or on the other hand, of undermining them. And the result is actually very fragmented international system where long-standing agreements are put into question. So all these factors point to a trust deficit. So public trust in government, media is at historic low. Misinformation leaves people unsure about what to believe, and geopolitical risks undoing years of goodwill. And the consequences of these is very profound. And without trust, we risk a world where collaboration grinds to a halt, precisely at a time when global challenges such as the pandemic, such as biodiversity, climate change, technological disruption demand more cooperation than ever. So why is this so critical to research and innovation? So why spend time talking about it? And I want to talk about the role that I have in the university. When Jane introduced me, she said I chair the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And me sitting in a lot of boards, you can see all these playing out. And it hit first with research, innovation, and startups and entrepreneurship, actually, that has always been very vibrant in the academic sector, but it is taking a hit as we speak. So I should move on to the next slide. Okay. So in the realm of R&D and innovation, trust is that glue that holds collaboration together. And breakthroughs today would arise from teamwork across borders and sector. And we think about international research labs, collaboration between industries. And by the way, NTU has within Singapore, and Singapore is a small country, like New Zealand, in population base, much larger geographical wise. We have about 5.8 million population. And so these corporate university partnerships and public-private initiatives are exceedingly important to drive innovation and research. And these innovations and collaboration will only thrive if participants trust each other to share data, to share insights, and importantly, to share credit. So I want to talk about two examples where there are good success. COVID-19, the pandemic gave the world a crash course in scientific collaboration under pressure. And the speed at which these vaccines were developed actually in less than a year, it's been phenomenal. And how that could happen, it's unprecedented actually. And it was largely a lot on the openness and the trust among scientists globally. So in January 2020, when this virus became a global pandemic, as soon as the new coronavirus genome was sequenced, a team of Chinese and Australian just put this out, readily available online for researchers worldwide. This act of trust, which is the sharing of really critical data without hesitation, allowed labs from London, from Boston, all the way to Johannesburg to start working on the vaccines. The other one too that was happening at that time, because there was concern that once the vaccine is out, how do we make sure who pays for what? Would the rich countries starts to hog the vaccines? So COVAX was formed, and there was trust in the global mechanism that COVAX will fund and find a way to distribute this vaccine equitably. So you have two really nice examples where you get multiple effective vaccines in really record time and saving millions of lives. And this was not a one nation accomplishment. It was a triumph of a trusted global collaboration around the world. And without the initial trust to share the genome or the willingness of scientists to work together across borders, the vaccine timeline would actually have been much, much longer. Next, I want to talk about CERN. CERN was started in it's the European Organization for Nuclear Research based in France. And it operates a very large Hadron Collider. It's a synchrotron facility near Geneva. It involves 10,000 scientists over 100 countries. And it was specifically built to rebuild trust and collaboration in science after the Second World War. And it's always been open to scientific communications from all around the world, overcoming political barrier. That was its mission. Even during the Cold War, American and the Soviet physicists were working shoulder to shoulder at CERN. And while their governments might have been at odds, fighting with each other, but inside the lab, a shared trust in scientific norms and openness actually prevailed. In everyday life as well, everyday innovation, in corporate R&D partnerships, university collaborations, trust is a lubricant for innovation. And a company sharing trade secrets with a partner, a university team bringing experts from the outside, must trust that the other don't steal, whether it's your ideas or sabotage your efforts. And when trust is present, people take the necessary risk for innovation. And we've seen that quite often. I've seen it more often in the past, as I say. They share early stage ideas, they admit to failures, they pool resources together. When trust is absent, then collaboration becomes very superficial. You're very cautious about what you share, you hold back, there's duplication, you're fact-checking all the time, and secrecy then reigns, and the whole effort truly suffers. Now, something that happened recently, and I wanted, when I spoke to the Charlotte and Jeff, I believe, in a phone call, and I was talking about DeepSeek. It was at the time when DeepSeek was just announced. And so I thought it'd be interesting to look at willingness to collaborate then and now. And you looked at over the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, the idea of a Chinese open source AI model commanding global attention might have seemed a little far-fetched. China wasn't there as yet 10 years ago. Today it's a reality. And it has elicited both genuine admiration and renewed strategic anxieties. The global scientific community's reaction to DeepSeek then and now teaches us that trust in science has multiple dimensions. There is trust in the integrity and the quality of the science, which China has boasted by embracing openness and demonstrating results. However, trust in the intent and context has been weakened by geopolitical rivalry. And going forward, sustaining global scientific progress will need to navigate this duality. And efforts to keep channels of open scientific exchange, such as open source projects, international conferences, joint standards, are more crucial than ever to bring this East-West divide together more closely. Ultimately, whether DeepSeek becomes a foundation for collaborative innovation or a spur for further division will influence not just AI development, but the broader fabric of scientific globalization. So now we look at new risk and new realities and new risks. I think I'm pointing to the wrong one. Okay, we got it. So the landscape for global research and innovation is shifting really quickly. And even as we acknowledge the power of trust, we must actually learn how to operate in a world where trust is in short supply. So we talk about geopolitical and economic decoupling, and actually there's also technology decoupling, and this refers to the unwinding of the deep economic and scientific ties that over the past few decades globalization has built. And today we see very intentional pullback from these collaborations between blocks of countries. And of course, you know, the one that we read in the news most frequently is the US-China split in science and technology. And for decades, actually, US and China have collaborated. They've collaborated in 30% of the papers in the past decade of highly cited papers. 30% of these papers are co-authored with the Chinese. When you look at even, I'll talk about venture capitalist funding as well, that has truly declined tremendously. So the two governments have implemented really strict export controls on advanced technology, banning cutting-edge semiconductor equipment from being shared, all citing security concerns. And China, for its part, it actually has poured in a tremendous of money into becoming self-reliant in science and has become less welcoming to Western institutions. For instance, when I was in China 2 years ago, China has about 6 or 8 national labs, and one of the national labs is an AI national labs. And China has invested USD $300 million into these national labs. I would also say that companies like Huawei are really going out and tapping on talent. We have a young professor, brilliant young, and was given a 1 million sign-on bonus just to join Huawei. And Huawei has a 34 billion research funding. So these investments are nothing to be sneezed at. And we've seen Western companies already de-risking operations in China, and China forming its own collaborations with other partners. And Singapore also seems to be quite a popular partner with China. So why is this a risk? Because knowledge itself could become siloed, important scientific data may not be shared across these divides, talented minds do not get to come together to co-invent new solutions. And there are other geopolitical tensions that add to this picture. So the Western break with Russia not only have political consequences, but also on international projects. So climate research in the Arctic, Russia and the Western teams is stalling now, and that's actually a very important study on climate change and the melting of the icebergs. So the new reality is that international collaboration can no longer be taken for granted. It's increasingly subject to national security logic. And the risk is that each side goes to it alone. They do it alone, leading to duplicated efforts, slower progress, and a loss of synergistic benefits across the globe. I think there's also the weaponization of technology. So we are in the midst of a technology revolution, AI, biotechnology, cyber, and that actually carries a tremendous amount of promise, but at the same time, threats as well. Artificial intelligence is a prime example. AI advancements are now seen as a key economic and military power. And this has sparked what many has called the AI arms race. And countries are racing to develop military AI, from autonomous drones to AI-driven cyber weapons, raising fears of actually a destabilizing global competition. And recently, I read an article in the San Francisco Standard. And what alarmed me was Stanford students used to look for jobs in Meta and Google, and you know, it has this ideal about tech for good and all those, but now they want to work in defense startup. And in one, I read a student say, "Love the war tech." So it's really a concern right now beyond warfare that technology is being weaponized. and cyber attacks have also become a common tool for statecraft. And the line between war and peace is blurring, especially in the cyberspace. And if countries don't trust each other, they're less likely to share threat intelligence or agree on cyber norms. And this makes everyone actually a lot more vulnerable. I told you it's not a topic to get to know in the evening. But as I said again, I think this is an important topic to talk about. And all these tech weaponization trends means that research and innovation in some fields like AI, like biotech, cybersecurity, it's now happened in a climate of mutual suspicion. The researchers will say, will my work be twisted into a weapon? The government will ask, can we collaborate on AI, or will that jeopardize our security? And the risk is that fear stifles the openness of innovation needs. And the last one is, in a digital age, data is power. I think you may have heard data is gold, but it's actually power as well. It's shared, how it's not shared across border has huge implications for research and innovation. And we are witnessing this tug of war over data, intellectual property that reflects a very low trust environment. And for example, personal data flows between regions have become very contentious. And one is the European regulators who struck down the EU-US Privacy Shield arrangement in 2020. And it was only in 2022 that they introduced a new one, but a lot of skepticism still remains. China then gone ahead and enacted strict data localization law. Under its data security law, certain data about Chinese personal data, name, critical citizen information, critical sectors must stay in China. Actually, this adds a lot of cost for businesses. I think India has the same practice as well, where you really need to consider where data are put, because they don't trust foreign entities with it. International property is also another flashpoint. Governments, companies are very wary of IP theft in collaborations. One recent survey showed that 1 in 3 CEOs worldwide see cyber espionage, IP theft as top concerns for their businesses. And I see it across all sectors of the businesses. I don't think anyone is spared. So we have a paradox. On the one hand, we need to share knowledge openly to innovate. And on the other, this fear of IP loss of misuse is causing a lockdown on information. And now companies draft thicker and thicker NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, to guard the data and IP. And the trust that once underpinned global partnerships has now been dented by security fears and protectionism. So we'll spend a short time to explore the implications of this on STEM startup. I think, like many universities, NTU is encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship. It wants to encourage its students, its faculty to work on innovations, to be able to commercialize their innovation, and to create knowledge as well. So these implications on the development on STEM startups is important to explore. Cross-venture funding definitely under strain, and this geopolitical rivalry is really reshaping how money is flowing and where it's flowing. So in the midst of this US-China, venture deals between US and China is at an all-time low. In 2023, it was low. 2022 was only a third of 2021. So you can see how fast it's gone down. And geopolitical erosion of trust is costing investors to de-risk. And how do you de-risk? You work with allied markets. And Western limited partners now shy away from funds with significant China exposure. And actually, this also occurs in research as well. There's a lot of scrutiny in research with China or research with Chinese researchers. So major US VC firms have refocused back in North America. Europe and India, and globally, cross-border venture deals in strategic technologies are slowing because investors are weighing the regulatory and the reputation risk, because one minor mistake could actually be very, very costly. So even in Asia, investors are reallocating capital. So Southeast Asian, for instance, and Indian startups has seen actually a lot of funds interest from Western and Japanese funds. They see it as an alternative to China. One interesting thing is, as I said, late last year, I took the NTU Board of Trustees to China. We visited the 4 top universities, and we visited about 6 large companies in China. BYD, Tencent, that's just to name a few. Now, the interesting thing is, while US is pulling everything back, while US is trying to nationalize, China, consistent message we heard is it wants to globalize. It wants to reach out to outside of China. In fact, NTU has been getting a lot of interest from universities in China to collaborate and to set up campuses there. But of course, we have to take all these we have to look at these into detail, as a result of what's going on around the world. Scientific collaboration and R&D partnerships are also increasingly constrained, and joint research that once flourished is now limited by national security policies and suspicions of foreign influence. So the US and China, while they've built really deep research partnership over the past few decades, that link is fraying. And now rising tensions is threatening to unravel all these relationships and all these collaborations. American researchers are also shying away from projects with Chinese collaborators. This is for fear that a minor missteps could end their careers. It's that serious. And the number of Chinese students and scholars in the US has dropped sharply. And so I referred to the visit to the 4 top universities in China. We met a number of these researchers. They were graduates from Harvard, from Stanford, from top universities in the US, and they are back in China. I think market access is the other one that is restricted, as well as countries deploy export control, sanctions, and bans on foreign entities. And for STEM startups, this actually means a more fragmented global markets and complex compliance to reach customers. The United States and allies have tightened export controls on advanced technology, and this directly impacts startups in sectors such as semiconductors, as AI, and aerospace as well. And Chinese, on the other hand, have also put in export restrictions, and the export restrictions are on certain minerals like rare earth, gallium, germanium, and these have been imposed in retaliation, squeezing non-Chinese firms. So beyond export controls, governments are also banning, it's just outright banning or sanctioning of foreign tech entities. China does that, has done that in the past, and India in 2020 banned 200 Chinese applications, and this includes TikTok and WeChat. So it's tit for tat, you can see it's tit for tat measures, and it fragments the market along geopolitical lines. A startup will have to choose sides, and I've seen that in many of the startups that we have come across, especially in NTU, or maintain separate versions for different blocks. And startups not being able to scale globally due to this trust issue can really stifle growth. And export market uncertainty also complicates valuation. So you see a lot now when you evaluate a business, geopolitical risk is always quite high up in the valuation. I think what's important is also human capital. Human capital is the lifeblood of STEM startups, but talent mobility is being impeded by geopolitics, and visa regimes and nationalistic policies are making it harder and harder for startups to attract and deploy the best talent. And I just want to quote what's going on in the U.S., right? This attack on institutions, educational institutions. On the flip side, friendlier jurisdiction is taking advantage of what's going on in the U.S. So science institutions, I heard that Cambridge is parking themselves in top universities in the U.S. to attract their professors there. And in Hong Kong, SAR, the government has a global professorship program, and it offers NZ dollars, $23 million of startup research fund per candidate. Even Singapore cannot beat that. So the geopolitical climate has made really tech policies really volatile, and startups really face a whiplash from sudden changes in export bans, in sanctions, or data localization. And for startups, this constant change in rules mean this need to monitor and adapt, and inevitably breaking a law. And heavy compliance burden actually demand legal counsel and operational overhead that young companies actually struggle to afford. So this complex compliance landscape can slow down development and expansion, and time that would otherwise go to innovation. So I want to talk about, after all these challenges, just talk about, what are some of the collaboration models that could work. One, I quite like this. This is the All European Academies for Science, and they put up in December 2024, so fairly recent. They released a statement on research collaboration and research security in this shifting geopolitical landscape. And the statement addresses what is called responsible internationalization. And I quite like the way they have put this. I talk about the duality of, you celebrate the innovation, and then you have anxiety over, the threats and all those things. And what this is they've tried to address it through some framework, and reaffirming principles of openness, of integrity, and freedom of scientific research. They say that must be safeguarded, even as legitimate concerns on security, research security are addressed. So I wanted to point this out to say that, it is all these things that we talked about, it impacts every aspect of institution, from corporations to even academic think tanks and all those. And this is quite a good way, but the Europeans also have a reputation for being able to develop really good statements. How they implement it eventually, it's for us all to watch. But I thought, it's quite a good guideline. Now we then think about in institutions other than universities. We see, one of them is in terms of collaboration model, we see a shift towards smaller coalition of trusted partners. So you only work with those you trust. And institutions are pursuing what is sometimes called as friendshoring. So you only work with versus offshoring or outsourcing is friendshoring or alliance-based collaboration. And the idea is you collaborate deeply within a circle of trust where everyone shares the same values and strategic interests. So it reduces the risk of betrayal or misuse. And in the private sector, this is mirrored by industry consortium, and you've seen quite a bit of that, where companies agree on a set of common rules to collaborate. So trust then in this smaller group, information can flow more freely, and the risk, of course, is that this approach can deepen the global divide even further. But under today's circumstances, it's actually a pragmatic way forward. So surprisingly, even as institutions struggle, the open source movement of a decentralized platform are actually enabling collaborations in new ways. And there is one that coders and application developers use called GitHub. So thousands of developers from rival countries collaborate on this open platform called GitHub every day, and they're bound by a common purpose. Everything is open source in that, and the intrinsic trust in each other's code contribution. And in there too as well, they trust that they get credit for their invention because they have tools like blockchains and all those that actually preserve the integrity of the creator's work. The other one is public-private partnership. And this is businesses and private organizations taking a bigger role in fostering collaboration. So you don't have to wait for the government to do their part. Private sectors can also actually get together as well. And as I noted right at the start that of all the institution, media, governments, NGOs, businesses are the most trusted. This is based on the Edelman survey. And so businesses these days can actually play a bridge role. They can step up and play a leadership role in pulling parties together to collaborate. And there are many examples of that. I in the interest of time, I won't go through them. Then I want to also talk about businesses championing standards and interoperable systems that keeps the world connected. So in the developing countries, some are still in 3G, then you have 4G, 5G, and there's a lot of contest right now, competition on 5G technology, and there are some that are already working on 6G, and I just want to highlight this global telecommunication body called the 3GPP. It's a third generation partnership project. It was formed, I believe, in 1992. And you imagine when we carry our phone around, everywhere we travel, we get access to network. It is this group that's been working very hard behind the scene to set the standards, to say how different generations phones, technologies on the phone can actually be used and can continue to communicate with each other as the technology changes. And these are really some very strong examples on how technology minds continue to come together and collaborate to ensure that the world remains connected. Still okay so far? All right. Not few more slides to go. If I can move this. Okay. Yep. So what can business leaders do? And I think it's important that I've put here business leaders, but it's actually all leaders, is to think about how you actively develop this environment of trust in the institutions that you work with. First, I would say you make transparency a norm in your project and partnerships. Share information openly, within reason, of course, within what you can do, and set clear expectations and communicate honestly about risk and progress. And trust is built or eroded in very small iteration. The ex-CEO of Royal Dutch Shell used to say, it takes a bicycle ride to build the reputation that you want. It takes a Ferrari to lose it. So I thought it's quite a good analogy. So in this environment, in leading with transparency and integrity, if your team messes up, own it, fix it. And this actually increases trust, as counterintuitive as that may sound, because partners sees that as you having accountability. And invest in relationships and cultural understanding. So this relationship building is quite essential, and it's something that a leader must foster This means going beyond the transactional, taking the time to build personal rapport with your partners, your collaborators, and even understanding how people from different culture gets to decision, how they convey their decisions. I used to think that the Japanese, I used to live in Japan, and I used to think that the Japanese are quite rude because they will say, I want you to do this, I will not do this. But, you know, when I begin to understand their culture and their language, actually their language is that literal. And so for them, it's a direct translation. They don't realize that, you know, I want you to do this. It comes out as very authoritative. But, you know, understanding this sort of gets you over that cultural divide. I think what's important beyond, you know, the culture and fostering integrity and all those things, strengthening IP and data security. It's really important because it is a fear, it is a concern that IP could be stolen, data could be misused, and you as a leader, you need to be clear on what protection that you are putting in place to protect your intellectual property and your data. The other one, which is actually, and when I was in Shell does that a lot. You actively contribute to the setting of standards. Some things that it's for self-interest, but it is really to learn and to be able to guide where you have the knowledge, to be able to guide where standards should be set and how standards should be set. So like TCFD, in TCFD, you've heard of TCFD, huh? It's a climate reporting financial risk. In there, there's scenario planning. So you need to understand scenarios that your businesses could go through and then identify what the financial risks are. So that scenario planning is actually something that came from Shell. And there is value to actually be involved in being part of this standard setting body. I think what's important is, as a leader, one of your most powerful tools is shared vision, is to inspire with a shared vision. And often distrust actually melts away when everyone can focus on a bigger common goal and emphasize, be clear on the purpose of the collaboration, remind teams that together you're aiming to do something and what that purpose is. So when the goal is meaningful and clearly requires collective effort, people are more likely to pull together. So we've covered a lot of grounds, from diagnosing the trust crisis to exploring new collaboration model to practical leadership tips. They are not silver bullets. You know, I think as leaders, we need to just navigate, learn, adjust, and do what is best. But ultimately, it's engineering this environment of trust when different people, diverse groups can get together and co-work solutions, especially in this current world. And we come to the end, and I just want to zoom out here. This may be easier. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to just talk about. So I hope you've seen, right, that trust is not a nice to have. It's not this soft thing that you think it's nice, you feel warm and fuzzy. It is the bedrock for collaboration and innovation. And I want to share this slide especially. What alarms me, so when Edelman released their survey, there's one chart that I always look at, and that's optimism. So this question is asked: compared to today, the next generation will be better off. We're actually in quite a grim place, especially for developing countries, where only, so of all, not just developing countries, only 30% of those polled think that the next generation will be better off than them. That's actually not good, because when we lack optimism, a lot of the innovation, the desire to want to change the world all just goes away. Huh? And if you look at France, Germany, Japan, so last year Japan was at about 19, today is 14. It's quite a concern. So as leaders, we gotta give the young hope. And that actually it's we talked about when grievances increase, means I don't believe the other party will do what is to my best interest. They'll only look after their interests, or the rich only looks to line their pocket. I don't believe that they will do anything that will be good for me. Technology will not benefit me. So there's a cost of living, all these a lot of grievances, and when the grievances is high, trust is low, and you can see the correlation. When grievances are low, trust then becomes high. So I want to put this together, and I don't have a magic solution, but to say that we are at a time when action needs to be taken, and I want to share a powerful quote, and this is from former U.S. Secretary of State George Shultz, who once said, "Trust is fundamental, reciprocal, and pervasive. If it is present, anything is possible. If it is absent, nothing is possible." So the future of research and innovation, collaborations will be determined not just by technological advances or financial investment, but our ability to foster trust amidst all these differences that we see. And this is a leadership challenge as much as it is a technical one. And we need leaders who are trust architects, who consistently design partnerships, encourage empathy, transparency, and mutual respect. And with that, I come to the end. Glad to see you all still here. Thank you all very much.